Welcome to the Mentoring Triangle, and today we're joined by former racing driver Tom Gaymor, who is now the Academy Director at Carlin Motorsport. Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much, thank you for having me.
We really wanted to take the opportunity today just to explore some of the learning that you've undergone, both as a racing driver and post-racing, and also get a sense of the learning that you've gleaned about yourself and about sport through our London County mentoring workshops.
Yeah, no, when I was competing, I was absolutely fascinated with the technical and tactical aspect of the sport, because I felt that the more I focused on this aspect, the better I'd be, without realising the all-encompassing and almost crippling state that I had with overthinking everything that I was doing. And what I did was essentially take myself away from doing what I did naturally by overthinking it, and I became anxious, I started to fear failure, and I started to become very vulnerable. I didn't really feel incredibly normal, and I didn't really feel that there was a whole lot I could do about it. We had various sports psychologists within the environment, but as far as I was concerned, these individuals were employed by my employees, and I was not about to go and explain to them I was incapable of doing my job. I think in essence I was looking out for somebody to empathise with, somebody that could come to me and explain that they had experienced what I was going through, that what I was actually going through was very normal, because as I look at it now, there was a vast majority of drivers within that field that were thinking exactly the same thing. And there's a vast majority of sportsmen and women, businessmen and women across the world thinking exactly the same thing. And ultimately, as we develop in this modern generation of scrutiny and social media and performance analysis, I think it's ever more present, the need for mentors, the need to get key individuals into these environments that can communicate and empathise with individuals going through what I went through, and actually helping them to break down the journey and to ultimately become better at understanding their self. I do think obviously there is a need for sports psychology, because if there is medical intervention needed, then it has to progress. But I think there has to be almost an interim within that role, within that relationship, whereby an individual is empowered with the strength to go and seek that medical help, rather than waiting until it's too late. And there's been certain high profile cases in the media of late whereby it is too late and the individual cannot go on anymore, and it shouldn't be waiting until someone is on their knees before they're given the help that they need. And I think London County and the mentoring process that we have here, the individuals that we have and we have access to, based all the way around the world almost, I think they are key in terms of infiltrating these sports and business networks to try and better the situation.
And I've heard you, a few months ago talking, and it was I learned so much, not just about your sport, but about particular pressures of that context and the insight you've got now. I remember you saying, kind of, if only I'd known then what I know now,
Absolutely.
sort of thing. But you are in a position, perhaps with the Academy, to help youngsters who are at the stage when you were vulnerable. How are you applying the insights that you've got through these?
That was my main reason for being involved in the Academy. I took to coaching to be able to impart the knowledge and the experience that I have, and to create leaders within my sport and leaders in life, to create more rounded human beings, to take away the emphasis on the technical and tactical and actually get the individuals to think in the correct way, without coining your phrase, Neil. Top performance can only take place when the correct thinking is in place. So my emphasis at Carlin is to focus more on the human and to get them thinking and understanding themselves better within certain environments, because the technical and tactical aspect comes naturally to them. And yes, we do coach that, But the key is getting them to believe that they can do it, and that what they're thinking is normal, and that they are comfortable within their sporting environment. Because if they're not comfortable within their sporting environment, it tends to be because they're not comfortable within themselves. And if they're not comfortable within themselves, they'll find it a real distraction in terms of reaching top performance.
And Tom, many sporting systems, like everything else in business, have finite resources. A set amount of money, a salary cap or whatever. What would you say to sports directors, performance directors who might say, well, I think I prefer to spend a bit more money on a transfer or on a bit more coaching around the tactical side rather than this sort of thing, which looks a bit slushy, and I'm not sure it really helps us with performance. What would you say to such a person?
I haven't really heard that too much, but what I do hear relentlessly is, well, if they're not strong enough now, then they'll never be strong enough in Formula 1, so we might as well shut them on the scrap heap.
Right.
Which is
the times now,
which is an incredible statement to make, because ultimately, as coaches and as managers, the understanding is that you're meant to impart knowledge on an individual to better them in order to better deal with the situations that arise. So how can someone possibly be at 15 good enough to endure the pressures with no life experience, with very few resources in terms of looking at the journeys that they've been on, to cope with the pressures that a 23-year-old Formula 1 driver experiences? It just cannot happen. So I absolutely cannot tell you how much I find that statement really frustrating. So, my viewpoint is to be as hands-on and as involved as you possibly can be as an individual. I think when focusing with an individual, I think it's all very well looking at the grass is green on the other side. How do you know that the person that you're going to bring in does not have exactly the same characteristics as the individual you just shipped out? I know through previous experience, and as we've said already in this conversation, we're all human beings, we're all pretty similar. And ultimately, that is why you need to go in and you need to have better understanding about these issues. And I don't like the word attack them, but certainly, bring them to the forefront. And if there are individuals within your squad that don't necessarily need the help, then brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic. I couldn't be happier for them that they are happy and have a really good understanding of self. But there are individuals within the sporting environment that do need it, and they shouldn't be shied away. They shouldn't be, pushed away or put into a corner because they need that.
Well, one of the things I hear a lot about from chief executives or board directors is return on investment. And people are looking for some quick fixes. So if I invest this, I get that. The classic being football, when there's a transfer window, team struggling, wants to go and buy a new player in the transfer window and is prepared to almost bet the house on it. But if you were to say to them, well, how about investing 25% of that into a development program, which is not only going to enhance one player, but the nature of the program means that the quality of the peer learning is that you actually may get half a dozen people coming through together. And that sense of quality shared history that you have through a development program then becomes the soul of the future team. But the return on investment for that, whilst it might be much more significant, it's not a gamble, it's down the road, and people are looking at it here and now. But I'm just looking at the amount of money that gets spent on development programs where things don't turn out very well. And I'm not sure enough difficult, incisive questions are being asked of the program and its process. Because if only a small percentage of people emerge through these programs, then it either says that maybe the incorrect people were identified in the first place to benefit from it, or the quality of the process that you've put people through is flawed. And they shouldn't be failure factories where it's seen as a result if someone comes through and plays in the first team. Ultimately, you want everyone to emerge through these kind of development programs. So my feeling is the return on investment is that more people over time will succeed. And then the other element is that the players who do emerge through this kind of process, where they have a stronger sense of self, become lower maintenance individuals within the sport. And I think one of the things I've really learnt as a partner of yours with Carlin Motorsport has been how important the relationship is between engineer and driver, and how the guys in the pit are absolutely essential to getting the car across the finishing line, first, or certainly podium. So the quality of the relationship, understanding each other's jobs and the role that you need to play in enhancing those relationships, is absolutely essential. And you can't do that if you're an overindulged, immature athlete who's driving the car. Whereas my sense is, having listened to some of your stories, there are some really, really special people who are getting great results at the moment. I mean, you spoke about Vettel's relationship with people, and one or two other people you've highlighted that were much better than others in terms of managing the relationships around them.
Well, what happens with the Vettel effect is exactly the same analogies I just brought up a second ago. There are certain individuals that are very, very talented and have a very, very good understanding of self and are very robust and very good at motivating themselves. Now, at the same time, he's very, very intelligent in terms of who he has around him. So he hasn't just fallen into having a strong support network. He's had the ability to choose them and the foresight to do it. Now, he's lucky because he has that maturity. I think other individuals need to be coerced and supported through a mentor role to educate them on the value of having a strong support network and why that'll work out and who to trust and who not to trust. That's the $1 million question in sport. How many people are out there to earn a quick buck out of certain high earners? But going back to Vettel, 26, four-time world champion, he's a very, very special individual. One point that resonated a second ago with what you were saying, Neil, is we talk a lot about the importance of this within sport, and the return of investment. Surely there is a duty of care as well, and I know we've talked about this in great detail, and I've been through this as athletes that drop out of sport through injury or retire because it's the end of their career. There has to be a duty of care in order for these individuals to move into the everyday world and be satisfied and understand what's going on. Nowadays, you are taken from a school into an academy and you're institutionalised with very, very little experience of the everyday world. You are sheltered from what goes on. The bubble that you're living in is not ordinary, and you don't have much experience in the way of other sports, working with other people, how the everyday world works. And so all of a sudden you pop out the other side, you've probably learnt characteristics that are not that conducive to dropping into the everyday. You become selfish, self-centered, egotistic, and then you're left to fend for yourself. Now, surely there has to be a duty of care within these establishments whereby you're educated and supported when you drop out of the sport as well.
It's interesting how thinking of Team Murray and how he's built a team around him. And
Yes,
of course, the other top fours have got great players in recently, haven't they? As mentors to sort of support them. So at that level, you need that team.
Yes.
Intense pressure they're under. I wanted to join up a couple of things we've been saying, and with that duty of care point, the return on investment, the mindset of the people who are investing the money, and to bring it back to the script you said they had, which is that they want their players to be strong. If they're not strong enough, discard them, which is the ignoring their duty of care bit. And I wonder if you could just give us your thoughts about strength, because by them, for the investors, being strong means just tough, dealing with all the nonsense that's thrown at them, and robust and resilient in that very tough way. But actually, I think the way we talk about strength, it's a strength that comes from understanding who you are and where you're going, your emotions, the way you think, the way you relate to other people. And have you found a way of constructing that argument? So you can challenge back. We want the tough ones and throw the ones out who are weak.
Yeah.
What?
Well, yeah, and I think I haven't essentially challenged it head on, but I've kind of said that ultimately all of these attributes come through experience. So why are we looking at an individual and essentially saying he's not good enough because he hasn't had the life experience of somebody else? So he hasn't had the tools and the lessons to learn from that somebody else has had. So it's essentially an unfair playing field. So sport is, through regulation, meant to be a fair playing field. So within this area, you are ultimately taking an individual who's got a better set of tools in terms of the lessons he's learned and experienced to deal with certain situations. Now, I remember in my career, I had some incredible highs, and I also had some incredible lows. And as soon as I had some incredible lows, it was amazing how quickly the negativity started. Now, I'm experiencing these lows for the first time in my life, so forgive me if I'm struggling to deal with them, but I need that process. And I think the mentoring process is pivotal in that, because it gives somebody a support network to help contextualize what the lessons are you're learning. Otherwise, the learning process becomes prolonged, and it is an incredibly vulnerable place to be in, and it's a frightening place to be in. And the more high profile you are as a sportsman or woman, the more people get on your back, and that is not a nice situation.
And what a waste of the misery and suffering if you haven't learned from it.
Yes.
You just kind of survive it and get through the other end, and not use it as a...
Yes.
And not just for yourself, but for other people as well. And that's one of the things that I hope that we can continue to do through our work as a mentoring organisation, is that as a consequence of sharing one's own story, not only does it help other people, but it enables you to make more sense of it yourself. But one of the things that I'm really passionate about is the no rejects philosophy.
Yes.
In that, different experiences teach us different things.
Yes.
And just because someone has fallen short up till now, doesn't mean that if they were able to go through a really helpful learning process where they could unpack a lot of that experience and then work out different and better ways in order to engage with their sporting activity or whatever their performance activity is, then the value of all the errors and disappointments can be converted into wisdom. And it's that transformational process that I think is very difficult to do on your own. But when you're working through it with other people who can actually share other stories, whether it be through their own personal experience or the fact that there are other examples of people who've been able to transform these really difficult times and convert them into wisdom and then high achievement, they're the really powerful stories that I think are inspirational. But I think, in terms of your work with drivers, Tom, if there's one final comment that I would make in terms of our conversation today, was something that you said at one of our workshops in November, where you said there was a period in your life where the only time you felt safe was behind the steering wheel going at 200 miles an hour. And I found that a remarkable statement,
Yes,
but
very
also I don't think that's a unique story.
No.
So part of our challenge, and through the quality of developing this program centred around inner fitness, is helping people to become more safe in other parts of their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Great conversation. Thank you.